Hey there, guys. I just want to talk to some of you out there about being a person that does not have faith and talking to a lot of friends and family. I'm sure a lot of you must have that are very close to God or very close to the religious establishment. Um, I've recently had a friend of mine myself that was very much like that, and I encountered an experience tonight after 20 years of knowing this guy that really opened my eyes in terms of how we go out there and we talk to a lot of these people and how what we actually say does impact them in a lot of ways. So, the gentleman I'm talking about, I'm just going to give you a little insight into my background because his background is extremely similar. And you'll kind of know where we're coming from and uh, the backstory of the particular situation. So, I'll be honest, I was raised here in Canada, in Saskatchewan, as almost a creationist. We weren't necessarily raised with the 6,000-year-old Bible, but we were raised through the Catholic school system to believe that Noah's Ark was an actual event, and that the Bible was historic, that Jesus really lived and walked on water and turned water into wine and turned a loaf of bread and a fish into food for hundreds of people, if not thousands. We were taught that the events in the Old Testament and the New Testament were either true or had great elements of historical truth in them. So we were both brought to church. Every Sunday you would go to church and you would basically get involved in the youth group. You go to Bible studies, you listen to the sermons and the homilies. You come home and your parents would be watching some, Christian History Channel that tries to make the assertions of, here's David's throne or David's city, or this palace was in this particular book of the Old Testament, and basically these shows that would try and historically prove that Christianity was real. I was also involved in ministry for a number of years. I helped minister through the Salvation Army to people that were needy or homeless. My friend of mine was also involved in ministry in a lot of youth groups where he would talk to youth about, what God was, what Christ was, what Christ's message for us was, how to look at a Bible, how to read a Bible, and all the rest of it. So that's kind of our history. So where I'm going with this is basically I've known this guy for about 20 years now. I met him originally in grade 5. And about 3 years ago or so, when I actually got into real education, in other words, when I started my university education, which is a real gift, by the way. Those of us who have that privilege to get a post-secondary education, I feel are incredibly blessed. Oh man, that's a bad choice of words. We are incredibly lucky, and yeah. Anyway, so I became an atheist shortly after I began my university education because I started having a real look at philosophy and a real look at biology and biochemistry and geography and that sort of thing, and understanding what a fossil really was, and what genetics actually were, and how it works, and what Darwin's Origin of Species was actually about, and what Darwin was presenting, as well as various philosophical methods of what truth is and how to think critically, how to actually examine ideas and examine beliefs and see whether or not those actually hold any logical truth to them. So my friend at this point had started his post-secondary education around the same time I did, but he was still a very devout Christian until about a year ago. And it was about a year ago that basically we were driving along, and I'll always remember it. Basically, this poem "Footsteps" comes on the radio, and a lot of people that grew up in a Christian or Catholic community probably know that poem. It's a very special poem for a lot of people. It was one of my favorites as a child that was a believer. And it comes on the radio, and as an atheist, it was a poem that I really had to make a lot of consideration about. And I came to the conclusion that basically not only is it ourselves that carry us through the hardest times of our lives, where there is only one set of footprints. But it's also the people around us that help carry us on, that help support us in our times of need. And it's our community and it's ourselves helping each other in the end that really get us through a lot of those hard spots in our lives. So for me, it's still a very special poem, but it's taken on a very different meaning. At some point, honestly, I would love to be able to put out there an atheistic version of that particular poem, so people can see the beauty, and perhaps a different light, how God can be replaced with other things. But that's beside the point. The point is, this comes on, and you know how everyone's had those days when you're an atheist, where that one thing sets you off, and you just have to say something. You just can't hold it in any longer. It's that one little thing that you just have to get out. And it was one of those days. So I looked over to him and I said, would that poem lose any of its beauty if it was anybody other than God that was carrying you through all those hard times? And he pulled the car over. And he stopped. And I had a feeling it was going to be confrontational. And he looked over, and he was about to start, and then he did something I didn't expect. He stopped, and he looked away for a moment, and he looked back, and he said to me, I've never thought of it that way. And that was the start of a very long process over several months where we would have, talks for hours and hours and hours about things I had discovered actually reading the Bible just on my own from cover to cover. And things that we hadn't really discussed as adults theologically. And by the end of it, he became a fairly basically well known within certain circles, agnostic. Like, he's come out to a few people in his close family as agnostic and otherwise that have been very accepting. Now, point in case, we go forward, about another year or so, and he's met a Catholic girl that he's kind of really taken a lot of liking to, and they're getting married right away. And knowing him for 20 years, I'm the best man. So, she was raised in a very, very devout Catholic home, and she's in the process, I think, right now, from a lot of the discussions that we've been having, she's in the process of questioning her faith. For example, the other night we were talking about how there's actually 3 sets of 10 commandments in the Bible, but that's, again, beside the point. So they're sitting around the table trying to plan out this wedding, and her father is a very, very devout Catholic. He actually teaches theology in Catholic elementary schools as a class, and he is paid professionally to do this. So they're sitting around the table, and there's the priest on the one end of the table that I actually knew from confronting him a couple times about his sermons of preaching when I was around, and I actually stood up once in the middle of his congregation when a friend basically asked me to come and attend church with him, and I told the guy right off, I have no problems at all standing up in public and telling people that this is wrong and this is the way to look at it. But so it was himself and her father, and they're sitting there discussing the immediate wedding party and trying to decide what they're going to do for various clothing and whatnot. And it comes up that I'm the best man and I'm an atheist. And her father immediately looks at my friend and goes, well, you're just going to have to find a new best man and make sure he's not invited. And she told me his response, and it brought me to tears tonight a little bit, almost. He said, don't you dare discriminate against somebody just because they hold a different belief set than you do. Or that's no better than when Muslims tell you that you're doomed to go to hell, or you're doomed for torture because you're not a Muslim. It's no different. And how dare you diminish somebody else for doing that? And I just wanted to say, never give up. Because even if somebody seems like the most devout Christian in the world, you can get through to them, and you can make a very huge difference. Thank you.